Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English Listening Club. I'm Emma.
And I'm Jack. Hi, everyone.
Today we're talking about something really important for English learners. It's this idea. When you listen to English conversations, you do not need to catch every single word.
Yes, that idea can really change the way people listen.
I think so too. A lot of learners believe good listening means understanding everything. Every word, every sentence, every little detail.
But real listening usually does not work like that. In real life, people listen for meaning first.
Exactly. They listen for the message, the direction, the feeling behind the words.
And if you get stuck on one word, the rest of the conversation can disappear very fast.
Yes, that happens all the time. You hear one word you do not know, then your brain stops there. But the speaker keeps going.
And then suddenly you're behind. Not because the whole conversation was hard, but because one small moment pulled you out of it.
Right. So today we want to talk about why this happens and why it is actually okay not to understand every word.
And we'll also talk about how to listen in a more relaxed way, a more natural way.
I think many learners know this feeling very well. At first, the conversation sounds okay. You're following it. Then one unknown word appears.
And everything changes.
Yes. You start thinking, wait, what was that word? Do I know it? Is it important? And while you're thinking about that, the next sentence is already gone.
I've seen that happen so many times. It's such a common habit.
Me too. And honestly, it makes sense. People want to understand. They want to do well. So when they miss something, they feel nervous.
That nervous feeling is a big part of the problem, actually. Sometimes the unknown word is not the real problem. The stress after it is the real problem.
That's such a good point. Because once people get nervous, they stop listening calmly.
Yes, their attention becomes very narrow. They are no longer listening to the whole message, they are just chasing one missing piece.
And sometimes that missing piece is not even very important.
Exactly. That's the funny part.
I remember talking to a learner once. She told me that when she watched English videos, she felt okay most of the time. But whenever she heard one new word, she immediately felt like her English was not good enough.
Ah, yes. I think many people feel that.
She said, "The moment I miss one word, I lose confidence." I thought that was such an honest way to say it.
It is? Because listening is not only about language, it is also about confidence, and confidence can disappear very quickly.
Especially in real-time listening. Reading is different. When you read, you can stop, you can go back, you can look again.
But listening moves forward. It does not wait for you.
Right? So if you try to control it too much, it becomes stressful.
And sometimes people learn the wrong habit. They think listening means checking every detail. But conversation is not a vocabulary test.
No, it isn't. It's more like following a road. You do not need to look at every stone on the ground. You just need to know where the road is going.
I like that image. It's simple, but it's true. I had a moment like this myself when I was learning another language. I was sitting in a cafe, listening to two people talk at the next table.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah. And actually, I could understand a lot, not everything, but enough. I knew the general topic. I knew they were talking about work, and one of them sounded tired and a little annoyed.
So the big picture was clear.
Yes. But then one word came up, and I didn't know it. I got stuck right there. I started trying to guess it, remember it, analyze it.
And the conversation kept moving.
Exactly. After a few seconds, I realized I had lost the whole next part. Not because it was too hard, but because I had stopped listening.
That happens so easily. And it's such a good example, because you actually understood a lot before that one word.
Right? The strange thing is, I was doing well, but I acted like one missing word meant total failure.
I think many learners do that. They are understanding maybe 60 or 70%, which is already pretty good, but they focus only on the 30% they missed.
And then they feel bad, even though they were doing fine.
Let's talk about something very important here. In real conversation, even native speakers do not always pay attention to every single word in the same way.
That's true. People listen for meaning, tone, emotion, and context, not just vocabulary.
Yes. If a friend tells you a story, you are usually not thinking about every word one by one. You are following the story.
You're asking yourself, what happened? How do they feel? What are they trying to say?
Exactly. That is natural listening.
So for English learners, the goal should not always be perfect listening. Sometimes the goal is connected listening, staying with the speaker, staying inside the message.
I really like that phrase, connected listening.
Because if you stay connected, you can still understand a lot, even with a few missing words.
And often the meaning becomes clearer later. The next sentence helps, the example helps. The speaker repeats the idea in another way.
Yes, language gives you many clues, but you only receive those clues if you keep listening.
Let's make this very practical. Imagine someone says, "The meeting was a bit chaotic, but we solved the main problem in the end."
Maybe you don't know the word chaotic.
Right? But you still hear meeting, but solved, and in the end. So you can guess that something was messy or difficult at first, but later it became okay.
And that is enough. You still caught the message.
Exactly. You do not need to stop everything just because one word is new.
Another example, someone says, I bought this jacket from a vintage store downtown. Maybe vintage is new to you.
But you still know they bought a jacket from a store downtown. The main point is still clear.
Yes, the conversation is still alive. You are still with the speaker.
And later, if you hear vintage again, maybe then it becomes clearer. Then maybe you learn it fully.
That is how learning often works. Not in one perfect moment, but across many small moments.
I think school learning sometimes makes this harder. Many people are trained to believe that one wrong word means one wrong answer.
Yes. So they become very careful, very focused on detail.
Which can help in some kinds of study, of course. But for listening, especially natural listening, that habit can become a problem.
Because it teaches people to stop too often.
Exactly. They are practicing stopping, not flowing.
That sounds simple, but it's a big difference. If your goal is conversation, then you need to practice moving with the conversation,
Even when it is not perfect.
especially when it is not perfect.
Yes. Because real conversation is never perfect. People speak fast sometimes, they change direction, they use easy words and unclear words together.
They also repeat themselves, correct themselves, and speak in unfinished ways.
Right? Real speech is alive. It is not a clean textbook paragraph.
I knew a student once who always paused the audio when he heard something unfamiliar.
Every time?
Almost every time. He wanted to understand everything before moving on, so he would stop, check the word, maybe translate it, maybe write it down, and only then continue.
That sounds exhausting.
It really was, and the problem was not that his method was completely wrong. That method can be useful sometimes, but he used it for all listening.
So he had no chance to build listening flow.
Exactly. He became very good at analyzing language, but not very good at staying inside spoken language.
That distinction matters so much. There is a time for close study, and there is a time for just listening through.
Yes, these are two different modes.
In one mode, you stop and study. In the other mode, you let the language keep moving, and you learn to follow it.
Both are useful, but many learners mix them together in an uncomfortable way.
And then they feel frustrated because they are trying to do two different jobs at once. I also think daily life gives us a good lesson here. When people travel in another country, they often do not understand every word, but they still manage.
Yes, that's true. They buy food, they ask for directions, they get on the train, they check into hotels, somehow they manage.
Because they use more than vocabulary. They use situation, tone, gestures, place, and common sense.
and keywords. Very often, just a few keywords are enough.
Exactly. So maybe English listening should feel a little more like that. Not like a perfect exam every second.
More like real understanding, flexible understanding,
That's a nice phrase too. Flexible understanding.
because communication is flexible. It is not made from perfect little blocks.
So what should learners do when they hear an unknown word?
First, do not panic.
Good first step.
Second, keep listening for the next idea, not the missing word.
Yes. Ask yourself, what is the speaker probably trying to say?
Third, listen for topic words. Words about time, place, people, feelings, actions. Those words carry a lot of meaning.
Fourth, use tone. If the person sounds excited, worried, tired, or relieved, that already tells you something important.
And fifth, trust repetition. People often repeat an idea in another form.
They really do. Sometimes the sentence after the difficult sentence is the one that makes everything clear.
But you only get that help if you keep going.
I want to say something encouraging here. If you often miss words in English conversations, that does not mean you're bad at English.
Not at all. It just means you're still building listening strength.
Yes, and that takes time. It also takes patience.
And I think it takes a calmer mindset, too. A person can know many words and still struggle with listening if they panic too quickly.
That is very true. Calm helps listening. Pressure hurts listening.
So sometimes improvement is not only learn more vocabulary, sometimes it is also trust yourself more.
I like that. Trust yourself more. Trust that you can understand enough even when one part is unclear.
Because often, enough is enough. You do not need full perfection to follow a conversation.
Let's imagine someone listening to a podcast while walking outside. Maybe they are going to school. Maybe they are on the train. Maybe they are just taking a walk after dinner.
Nice image.
If they hear one unknown word, should they stop everything?
Probably not.
No. It may be much better to keep walking and keep listening.
Because in that moment, the goal is not deep analysis. The goal is building comfort with English.
Building familiarity, building rhythm, building the feeling that English can keep moving and you can stay with it.
And over time, that feeling becomes confidence.
Yes, real confidence. Not the confidence that comes from understanding every word in one easy sentence, but the confidence that comes from surviving unclear moments.
That's a deeper kind of confidence. There is also a surprising thing here. Sometimes, when people stop chasing every single word, they actually understand more.
Yes, I really believe that.
It sounds strange at first, but it makes sense. When your mind is more open, it can receive more meaning.
Exactly. But when your mind gets trapped on one missing word, it becomes narrow. Too narrow.
And then the whole conversation feels harder than it really is.
So, in a way, trying to understand everything can sometimes reduce understanding.
Which is a funny result, but a very real one.
Yes, sometimes relaxing is not giving up. Sometimes relaxing is the smarter strategy. Before we finish, let's make the main idea very clear. Good listening does not always mean catching every single word.
Often it means following the message, the feeling, and the direction of the conversation.
If one word is unclear, let it pass sometimes. Stay with the speaker. Stay with the story.
Trust the next sentence. Trust the bigger picture.
And remember, real language is not perfect, so your listening does not need to be perfect either.
It just needs to keep moving.
That's a very nice way to say it.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to English Listening Club.
We're really glad you spent this time with us.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend who is also learning English.
Take care, keep listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.